Hello, and welcome to the second episode of Chess Skill Fix video series. Today, we will start dealing with a well-known endgame when one side has a queen and the other has one pawn. In this episode, we will cover some basics which I think every chess player should know. And in the next episode, I will show you why things are not as simple as you may think. So, there is one general rule. If the pawn advanced to, if it is white pawn, to the 7th rank, or if it's black pawn to the 2nd rank, so it has to make only one move in order to queen, and there is a king nearby that supports that pawn. In such situation, if this is a rook pawn, so a pawn on a file or h file, or it's a bishop pawn on c file or on f file respectively, in this case this is a draw. Otherwise, if it's a central pawn on d or e file, or it's a knight pawn on b or g file, in this case the side which has a queen can win. And I'll show you how. We will actually start with the case when the side which is up material can win in such situation. Okay, so here I'm playing against Stockfish. I'm white, Stockfish is black. He has a knight pawn, and it pawn needs only one move before it become a queen, and it will be just a dead draw. Therefore, I can't allow this pawn to move. On the other hand, if I will use only my queen, it will be impossible to checkmate black king. Therefore, somehow, I need to bring my king down the board, at the same time not allowing b pawn to proceed. So, the correct approach here is to force black king to go to b1, therefore it will be blocking b2 pawn. And we will achieve that easily with our queen, therefore allowing our king to make one move. Then we will repeat the same approach, and we will again force black king to go to b1, so that my king can make one more move. And eventually my king will come to that side of the board, and I will be able to checkmate black. Let's see how it works in practice. Now I have to make a check, otherwise b1 will allow black to make his queen, and it will be a draw. So check. Let's check him again. Okay, so now I don't want his king to come to b3, therefore let's check him from c4 square, securing b3. Now I need to double attack so that it will be a check and the pawn will be attacked. There are two ways to do that, from b3 and from d4. The difference is that if my queen will stand on d4, c2 square will be unprotected, so the black king will move to c2 again. I don't want that, so I'll check him from b3. And now I'll check him from c3, and the only possible move for him will be king to b1. So I will achieve what I wanted. And now I can make one move with my king. Okay, he played king to a1. This is not the best move here because currently his pawn is pinned. Therefore, I can bring my king one square more. And okay, now b1 queen is a threat again. So let's do pretty much the same thing. Now look, he did not move to a2 or c2, so he doesn't allow me to force his king to come to b1. But currently his king is only protecting his pawn, but it can't help the pawn to promote. So let's bring the king one square further. And now b1 queen is again a threat, so let's defend from that. Okay, here I should be a little bit careful so that the game will not end as stalemate. But I think everything should be fine if I play let's say king to d4. Why I didn't play king to c4? Because I now want to check black king from c4 square. Again, the same approach. And now he just doesn't want to defend this pawn anymore, because after one more move by my king, I will be threatening checkmate and there will be no real defense. So I will just grab this pawn and we will not continue anymore, because obviously it's possible to checkmate even Stockfish in such position. The same approach can be applied if your opponent has a d-pawn, e-pawn, or g-pawn. So, if it is on one of two central files, or if the situation is symmetrical to what we have just seen, then you know the rule. Use your queen to force your opponent's king to stand in front of his own pawn so that this pawn will be not able to advance. Then you will have one spare move that you need to spend for bringing your king closer to the opponent's king and pawn. Then you will need to repeat this several times, and eventually you will either win the opponent's pawn, or you will be able to checkmate him even without capturing the pawn. Well, so if you have never tried this in practice before, if this was the first time when you saw this approach, then I strongly recommend you to go to the chess.org right now and to try playing each of the four positions with b-pawn, d-pawn, e-pawn, and g-pawn against Stockfish, so that you will make sure that you didn't memorize the moves, but that you really understood the principle and that you will be able to apply it in any situation in a real life game. You may ask me, why can't I apply the same principle in case of rook pawn or bishop pawn? The point is that if your opponent has a pawn on a file or h file and this pawn is far advanced so that it has to make only one move before queening, then once you force your opponent's king to stand in front of the pawn, you will not be able to bring the reinforcements, you will not be able to move your king, because it will be a stalemate. The crucial difference is that there is only one file next to a file and h file. So this only file is controlled by your queen, therefore the opponent's king does not have any moves, neither does his pawn because it is blocked by the king. In case of bishop pawn, instead of moving the king in front of it, your opponent can move his king to a corner, and if we capture the pawn, then again it will be a stalemate. So let's see in practice how this works. So I'm playing black here, and I have a pawn on c2. Currently my king blocks it. Let's move this king. Okay, so Stockfish decided to pin the c2 pawn so that it will not be able to queen. But now let's make a move king to a1, and my opponent can't capture c2 pawn. Okay, Now let's defend this pawn. And now let's move the king to the corner again. You see the computer is trying to win, but there is no way, therefore it will not win. So, under normal circumstances, I will have to play king to c1 here. But in this case, I can play king to a1 because queen takes c2 will be a stalemate. And so on move 33, Stockfish decided to make a stalemate. So it's a draw. It's interesting to note that even though these two cases with rook pawn and bishop pawn look quite differently, the principle of securing the draw is the same. Put your king into the corner and play for stalemate. Again, if you have never tried this in practice, I strongly recommend you to go to Lichess and to try playing against the computer in all these four configurations with the A pawn, C pawn, F pawn, and H pawn. But currently you should take the side which is material down, and you must make sure that you will be able to get half a point, to get a draw, even against a very strong opponent like Stockfish, if you have one of these four pawns. In the end of today's video, I'd like to show you that if your opponent's pawn is not that far advanced, if it has at least two moves to make before queening, then it is always winning situation for you, even in case of bishop pawn or rook pawn. In such situation, the principle is the same. We should force the opponent's king to block his pawn so that we will be able to bring our king towards this pawn and king. And we should not allow our opponent's pawn to make even one move, because as we have just seen, it will be a draw. So let's start by pinning the f3 pawn. And you see our opponent blocked his pawn with his king. So let's bring our king closer. He tries to escape. Let's check him. Let's now double attack the king and the pawn. Let's check him again. And again he's blocking his pawn. And he can't play for stalemate, because if we capture with our queen on f3, then there will be no stalemate no matter where the black king is. Okay, so he wants to advance with his pawn. Let's check him from here. With checks, we should bring our queen closer. Now if I play queen e5 check, he will retreat to f1, which is what I don't want to see. So let's check him from here. And now we can check him from the e file. and with the next move I'm winning this pawn, and this is obviously winning for white. That's all for this episode. In the next episode, we will cover some particular cases in which the general principles that I told you about today do not work. But before you move to the next video, I strongly advise you to think on your own under which circumstances these rules that we were talking about this time do not work. Apart from that, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe in order not to miss the next episode. Bye.